All right, who here listened to my talk yesterday? Who here didn't listen to my talk yesterday? All right, we're running it back. Except last time I was like literally reading the article that's going to go out, and this time I'm going to freewheel it. Can I? I can do this. Okay, this talk is titled "Crypto's Here to Set Us Free." And personally, I'm obsessed with the relationship between the code that we write and the code that we ape into, and how it impacts culture down the line. There's a direct, well, not direct, but eventually there's a connection between the ones and the zeros at the basal level, and then like philosophy or how culture actually emerges. And so, while we design these systems, just like Charles was talking about, like it's really, really important to understand the code and how it impacts the people that use it. Little did I know when I signed up for Facebook when I was in high school, that it'd be causing civil wars down the line. So it's important to think about these things. And so this is a talk about that. This is the grayscale GBTC chart that trades on like the NASDAQ or the NYSE or whatever. It's like got a lot of stuff missing. Like there's all the gaps and it's ugly. It's unexpressed. There's things missing in there, and that's because the traditional stock markets are only open for 6.5 hours a day for like 253 days out of the year, and that's only like 19% of the year. So 19% of the year, Bitcoin looks like that. But on Coinbase, it looks like that. It's fully expressed. It's holistic. It's the medium upon which Bitcoin trades reflects what it does. And it also impacts our fidelity in how we choose to value Bitcoin. The market value of something is determined by the collective prices that we all ascribe to the assets that we trade. And so when something like shows up on a candle, it's because all the humans value that in a particular way. It's supposed to be a reflection of human values, but we're limited in the technologies that we have to actually express these things. And so the NASDAQ limits our ability to express how much we value Bitcoin, but Coinbase doesn't, because Coinbase is 24/7, 365, just like Bitcoin is. And so the technology is a medium for expressing a relationship that we have with these assets. It's not Bitcoin that tells us that it's valuable, it's us that tell Bitcoin that it's valuable to us. It's us that values provable scarcity. It's us that values peer-to-peer money, and here's how much we value that. That's what it's showing here. 1 second while I pull up my notes, make sure I don't get lost. And DeFi is more or less like doing the same. Because DeFi does exist, it's not D, but in traditional finance, DeFi is hidden behind the walled gardens of Wall Street. And so like when you take your US dollars, you put them into Wells Fargo, and they go and yield farm with it inside of the closed doors of Wall Street. That's what they're doing. And then they give you like the pennies at the end of the day. And so what DeFi is unleashing the actual power of finance to the rest of us. Like DeFi didn't invent finance, but for the majority of humans, it might as well have, because we've never been able to touch it before. It's been gatekept by the TradFi institutions that have been able to sell, to toll our access to it. And so the expressivity that finance allows us to have is kept away from us. Finance is a tool to just allow humans to express how much they value something. And in the world of traditional finance, we have bonds, stocks, and equities. And those are like 3 categories of assets. And then they trade on markets that are only online like 19% of the time. Free markets are way more than just what finance is about. The concept of free markets, when that lands on people's ears, they usually think finance and money, and not culture. But free markets are much more than just finance. And I think with the power of Web3, with DeFi, whatever this movement is, what finance can turn into is something that puts culture into money, and then it puts money into our culture. And so the cool thing about DeFi and Ethereum and all the stuff we're doing is we're actually producing economic foundations for different and more viable cultures. If a culture is viable because of Web3 and DeFi, we can actually find ways to monetize that and actually create that culture and uplift it and spread it around the world. A lot of people don't like crypto's like financializing everything. It is, but it's also culturalizing everything too. It's culturalizing finance. It's a meeting in the middle. One moment. Ba-doop, ba-doop, ba-doop. Oh yeah. So like while we have like 3 categories of assets in TradFi, like equities, bonds, stocks, derivatives, whatever, in crypto we have the ERC20 token and the ERC721 token. We have non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens. Those are all of the tokens. And all a token really is a blank slate for us to ascribe value to it. We tell it that it has value, and we use the EVM, we use smart contracts to etch in why this thing has value into the token. The EVM says this token is valuable because of this. And so instead of just like stocks, bonds, equities, derivatives, in the world of crypto, we have DAO tokens, we have NFT tokens, we have one-of-ones, we have membership NFTs, we have meme coins. Eventually, we have because there's only 2 types of tokens and we have both the standards, non-fungible and fungible tokens, that's all of the tokens. And so it's really just up to us to figure out how many tokens can the world actually sustain, because Ethereum kind of seems to be intent on minting every possible type of token. If there's one thing that we know about crypto is people love tokens, and they will find ways to make them valuable. That's literally all of our experimentation is about making different types of tokens valuable. We have like Bitcoin, it's the original token, and it's valuable because of its properties. But then we have Andre Cronje, RAC. He has the RAC token, and he has a website that unlocks stuff if you have the token. And instead of having stocks, bonds, and equities and derivatives, which are those types of categories of assets, again, that only trade 19% of the time, we have the infinite array of possible tokens that are traded on markets that never, ever sleep. And so going back to this, it's the same relationship where this is TradFi with a very poorly expressed Bitcoin, and here's Coinbase, but also like DeFi or Uniswap or whatever, that is fully expressed. But that's just a model. That's like, let's extrapolate that. This is our culture when finance is just in Wall Street, and this is our much more fully expressed culture when we have DeFi and all these tokens of an infinite array, and also because of the phenomenon of private keys, we have the infinite number, or the maximum number of people that can express their values upon the maximum number of tokens. The maximum number of people expressing their values to the maximum number of tokens. That's really cool. And that's what gets me really excited about making culture economically viable. One moment. Oh yeah. So this is a movie that's on Netflix. It's an okay movie. But it's a platform, it's like a jail, and it starts at level 1, and then it goes all the way down to like, it actually doesn't really tell you what the last level is. I think the last one that's shown in the movie is like 250 or something. And there's a platform with food on it. And if you're on level 1, you're chilling because it's got all the food. If you're on level 2, you're still chilling because it's got all the food. But you get down to like level 50, and like people start to have eaten all the food. And then at level 100, like, oh, there's not a lot of food left. And then if you're down to like the 150 level, like you're really starving because people ate all the food before it got to you. This is a world with intermediaries. In a world where we don't have private keys, we don't have a way to push value towards the margins of society, because all of our assets, all of our money are held by like custodians, banks, brokerages, and like even the nation state. If you own something, it's only because the nation state says that you do, like the courts agree that you own it. And so you actually have no way to truly own something if you have a dependency. Like even the courts are gameable. So do you really own something if you have to trust that the courts that you agree with say that you do? With private keys, we actually have the ability to send money very granularly to anywhere in society because of private keys. And so instead of this platform that has food at the top, and if you're like, floors 1 through 50, you're kind of chilling, but if your floor is 50 to 200, you're kind of dead. Instead, it much more equitably distributes all the value because we have a way to send the money granularly without having to go through the intermediaries. Intermediaries are just like these vultures that like exist around pockets of value and prevent the value from permeating out to the margins of society. One of the really cool things about private keys is that we get this like route around the intermediaries. So it just goes straight from the source of the value towards the person that values that the most, the person that owns the private keys. Sorry, I have one mode and it's excited and it makes me lose my breath. All right, let's see what picture's next. Oh yeah, okay, so this is Web 2 and TradFi. Because we don't have private keys, wealth in Web 2 and TradFi is inwardly concentrating. And our protocols like Twitter or Facebook or Goldman Sachs end up just being structures that allow billionaires to compete in billionaire games. But in Web3 and DeFi, because we have the ability to send money to the margins, all of a sudden that's a new vector for our protocols to compete on. It's a new primitive. Like Twitter, but in Web3, has the ability to send its users money. Now all of these apps have to compete on how can they send their users the money the best. Which apps can create the most value and distribute it to the people the most in the most sustainable fashion. This is what Kevin Owocki calls regenerative crypto economics. Because we have the ability to send monies to our users, now the social structures that we use have to compete on that vector. That's the new status quo. That's the new equilibrium. And that equilibrium came from private keys because we have the ability to send money to the margins. And the cool thing about private keys is they disproportionately benefit the people that need it the most, which are the people at the margins of society. The center gets cut out, and then the periphery gets enabled. This is what Vitalik means when he talks about how like Ethereum puts CEOs out of a job, but gives more money to the Uber drivers. It's about putting money at the margins. And culture is at the margins. Artists are at the margins of society. They're always at the frontier. They're pushing the boundaries. And the reason why, like, COVID happens, we all go into our homes, we make DeFi summer happen, all the finance people get a bunch of money because they're good at yield farming, and then the NFT revolution happens because the finance people want to fund the arts. Like, this happened in the Renaissance. It's the same model. Like, we made double entry bookkeeping, and all of a sudden our art got better because we injected money into the margins. Double entry bookkeeping is like DeFi for the 1500s. It's like instead of storing the gold in the church or the kingdom or whatever, you have people that can manage their own value because double entry bookkeeping is a decentralized system of money. One moment. Oh yeah, okay. So like, because Web3 pushes money to the margins, it makes us to have to go to the margins. And we've seen eras before where we have value elsewhere rather than at the center. Like the first one that came to mind is like the 1400s to 1750s, the era of gold, God, and glory, where all of a sudden there was this incentive to go outwards to go get the value. And so we did, and then we explored the world, and a lot of new value was created out of that. Never mind the whole conquering thing. But it allowed us to expand the map. It pushed society forward. We explored new frontiers. 1800s America, where we had a couple depressions on the East Coast in like 1819 and another year. All of a sudden, people wanted more freedom. They wanted freedom from the East Coast, and they wanted to go explore the West because there was gold out there was freedom out there. And so people went out there because there was value out there, and so we explored the frontier. The space race, we had this extrinsic thing, the moon, and we just wanted to go there. And because we had this extrinsic thing of value, because we perceived it to be valuable, we went there. So in contrast to Web 2, where power concentrates in Silicon Valley and TradFi concentrates wealth into Wall Street, Web 3 takes a $10,000 airdrop and it like chucks it into the metaverse and says like, go fetch, it's over there. And so if you want to go get this value, you have to get your private keys and you have to journey into the frontier. And where is the frontier? Right now, the frontier is the metaverse. That's why every single company is obsessed with it. For some reason, like Activision Blizzard wasn't a metaverse company, but then when Microsoft bought them, it was a metaverse play. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So our relationships with the platforms we use are about to go from extraction to enablement. Because Twitter doesn't have the way to send us money, it can't do that, so we can only give it our attention. It can only send us likes and hearts back. And we can send them our attention, which ends up being our money because of advertisements. But with Web3, because protocols have the ability to compete for how much money they want to send us, this turns a relationship with our protocols on its head. It's the new equilibrium, where our protocols go from being extractive to being enabling. And you guys have seen how many tokens get minted, and every single token that has value only has value because it has a community behind it. And eventually, I kind of think that there's going to be this mesh network of Web3 protocols, DeFi protocols, whatever these things are. And there's no way they just will permeate our lives in the same way that like Twitter or Instagram or whatever protocols we use, driving on the right side of the road, these will all start to enable us better. 5 minutes? Oh boy. So this is the center of Web 2. It sucks. The center of Web 3 is an oil geyser. It's like spitting out value. I'm going to speed run this because I am going to skip forward. Okay, so yeah, this is enablement versus extraction. When we find resonance with the systems around us, good things happen. This is the agricultural revolution, where we learn to harmonize with our plants. And we use plants to grow food, but plants used us to grow more of them. It was a symbiotic relationship. And the more plants that we grew, the more food we had, and so we could have more people who could grow more plants. And then there's more plants to grow more food, and all of a sudden, the population of the humans explode. I'm not going to play that. And like it's the same thing as how we domesticated wolves. Like right now, the Web 2 protocols are like wolves. They're kind of vicious. They bite. In the same way that we learn to domesticate wolves, we will learn to domesticate the protocols that dictate our lives. All this experimentation that we're doing in Web3 and DeFi, it's iterations on how do we get these Web3 protocols to more closely align with our human values. And now that we have the infinite array of tokens, along with the infinite array of possible humans that can participate in valuing these tokens with private keys, we can actually iterate faster and faster and faster. And so this is allowing people, society, to become the best versions of ourselves. Because we have finance that allows us to express our values and protocols that can become to reflect those values, all of a sudden society gets a clearer picture of who we are as a whole. We are more enabled collectively. But also, like humans, I personally believe that humans are inherently good. Everyone thinks that they're a good person. Sometimes we look outwards like, oh, that was a bad thing that they did. But collectively, we're good people at the inner core of us. But sometimes we get trapped and we accidentally make like the Holocaust. And even the Nazis thought that they were good. That was bad. And so this isn't like a slam dunk. We don't get to say like, oh, Web3, like utopia. We actually have to work for this. And that's why I respect people like Charles, who's trying to iterate on governance, because that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to iterate on how can we get our social structures to more closely resemble our human values, but also nudge it in a good way. And so I'm going to skip to the end. No, I'm going to do this meme. This is us pondering who we are as a society. This is what you think crypto is. This is what everyone else thinks crypto is. Like, oh man, my life would be just so much more complete if I had $1 million. It's helpful, but this is actually way better. Because if we have social systems that empower us, you don't need $1 million. You just exist in this Web3 mesh network, and this mesh network is competing to give you money. And so our protocol is going from fighting to make us more angry so that we can give it more attention, and our protocols go to fighting for our love, fighting for our attention, and how well can we harmonize. And so this is how we build a better future. Okay, so there's 2 phases of crypto. And we're still definitely in that first phase. And that first phase is the one with all the scams, the pump and dumps, the get-rich-quick schemes, because money's really, really fast right now. We're at the very beginning stages of this whole thing. Crypto's like 15 years old, but it's supposed to be a multi-100-year-long phenomenon, maybe even 1,000 years, who knows. But in this first phase, the whole greed is just the bootloader for getting everyone here. Everyone's here because they want crypto to make them more money. But everyone also knows that there's something real here. And what's real here is that we can actually have more sovereignty and more enablement via our protocols. Because if we want more money and more sustainable money, it's going to come from the protocols that learn how to sustainably give out the value the most to the most amount of people. And so that's phase 2. So we're on this rocket ship, there's a bunch of scams, but also there's a kernel of truth here, and we're blasting off out of orbit into what's it called when you're... Sure, that works. Once we're out of the atmosphere of the Earth and we're actually sustainably in space, that's phase 2, where crypto is actually here to enable you. So right now, crypto is a bunch of get-rich-quick schemes, but eventually crypto will be here to set us free. Thank you.